There is something profoundly unsettling about the absence of someone who was once a constant presence in your life. Not the dramatic exit with doors slammed and words hurled like weapons, but the quiet, deliberate withdrawal of someone who simply vanishes. No explanations, no confrontations, no desperate attempts to make you understand their worth. Just silence, just absence. This is the haunting realization that they have chosen to walk away with their dignity intact. This is not the behavior of the weak. This is the way of the Stoic. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, he understood something that few grasp, that sometimes the most powerful action is the absence of action. The greatest statement you can make is to say nothing at all. When you disappear from someone's life with the calm composure of a Stoic philosopher, you trigger something ancient and primal within them. You activate a psychological mechanism that runs deeper than logic, deeper than reason. You force them to confront the reality of your absence, and in that confrontation, they begin to feel things they never expected to feel. The person who took your presence for granted, who treated your availability as a given, who perhaps even exploited your kindness or ignored your worth, suddenly finds themselves in a void they cannot comprehend. They reach for their phone expecting your name to appear. They check their messages waiting for your familiar tone. They look for you in spaces where you once existed, only to find emptiness. And in that emptiness, something shifts. Something breaks. Something awakens. Seneca once observed that, "What is grief but an opinion?" He understood that our emotional responses are often reactions to our expectations being shattered. When you disappear, you shatter their expectation of your eternal availability. You force them to confront an opinion they never realized they held, that you would always be there, regardless of how they treated you. This is the first thing they feel when you simply disappear: complete and utter confusion. Not the kind of confusion that comes from misunderstanding a conversation or missing a detail. This is existential confusion, the kind that makes them question the very fabric of their reality. They replay your last interactions, searching for clues they might have missed. Was there something in your tone, a shift in your energy, a warning sign they ignored? They dissect every conversation, every gesture, every moment of silence, trying to understand how someone who seemed so present could become so absent so suddenly. This confusion is not born from curiosity alone. It emerges from the ego's inability to process rejection without explanation. The human mind craves closure, craves understanding, craves the comfort of knowing why things happen. When you provide none of these, you leave them suspended in a psychological limbo that forces them to create their own narratives, their own explanations, their own desperate attempts to make sense of your absence. Marcus Aurelius taught that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. By disappearing, you demonstrate this power. You show them that you are not controlled by their expectations, their demands, or their emotional manipulations. You reveal that your peace of mind is not dependent on their understanding or approval. As the confusion deepens, they begin to experience something even more unsettling: the complete disruption of their ego. For perhaps the first time, they are forced to confront the possibility that they were not as important to you as they believed, that their presence in your life was not the gift they assumed it to be, that maybe, just maybe, you were the one doing them a favor all along. This ego disruption manifests in ways both subtle and dramatic. They find themselves checking their reflection more often, questioning their attractiveness, their worth, their desirability. They begin to notice flaws they previously ignored, insecurities they had buried beneath layers of assumed superiority. The person who perhaps once took your attention for granted now finds themselves desperately seeking validation from others, trying to fill the void left by your absence. Epictetus taught his students that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your disappearance is not something that happens to them. It is something you choose for yourself. And their reaction to your choice reveals everything about their character, their insecurities, and their dependence on external validation. They begin to realize that your presence was not just background noise in their life. It was a constant source of energy, attention, and emotional labor that they consumed without ever acknowledging its value. Your listening ear, your supportive words, your willingness to be available, these were not entitlements. These were gifts. And gifts, once withdrawn, leave behind an emptiness that cannot be easily filled. In this emptiness, they discover something they never expected to find: longing. Not the dramatic movie script longing of romance novels, but the quiet, persistent ache of missing something they never realized they needed. This longing is not necessarily romantic. It transcends the boundaries of relationship types. It is the longing for your specific brand of presence, your unique way of being in the world, your particular form of attention and care. They find themselves remembering things they had forgotten: the way you listened without judgment, the way you offered advice without force, the way you existed in their life without demanding anything in return. These memories, once taken for granted, now become precious commodities in a market where your attention is no longer available. This longing creates a strange paradox. The more they realize they miss you, the more they understand how little they appreciated you when you were there. It is a cruel irony that reveals the human tendency to value things only in their absence. The Stoics understood this paradox well. Seneca wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect." An unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. Your disappearance is their disaster, not because you were their source of happiness, but because you were their source of consistent, reliable presence. You were the person who answered their calls, who listened to their problems, who celebrated their victories, who provided comfort during their struggles. And now, suddenly, dramatically, you are gone. As the longing intensifies, they begin to experience something even more uncomfortable: guilt. This guilt does not emerge immediately. It comes slowly, creeping in through the cracks of their ego, seeping into their consciousness like water through a damaged foundation. They begin to remember moments when they could have been kinder, more appreciative, more present. They recall times when they dismissed your feelings, ignored your needs, or took your efforts for granted. This guilt is particularly painful because it comes without the opportunity for redemption. There is no way to apologize to someone who has disappeared, no way to make amends to someone who has chosen silence, no way to prove that they have learned from their mistakes to someone who is no longer available to witness their growth. The guilt becomes a constant companion. In their head that whispers accusations during quiet moments: you should have treated them better, should have shown more appreciation. You should have realized their worth before it was too late. These thoughts cycle through their mind like a broken record, each repetition adding weight to their growing sense of regret. Epictetus taught that wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. Your disappearance forces them to confront their spiritual poverty. They realize that they had great possession: your presence, your attention, your care, but they wanted more. They wanted you to be available on their terms, to prioritize their needs over your own, to exist in their life without reciprocal investment. Now, in your absence, they understand the true meaning of wealth. They understand that having someone who genuinely cares about your well-being is not a given, it is a privilege. And privileges, once abused, are often revoked. The guilt transforms into something even more destabilizing: doubt. They begin to question everything they thought they knew about themselves. If they were truly as wonderful as they believed, why did you leave? If they were as important as they assumed, why did you choose absence over presence? If they were as valuable as they claimed, why did you find it so easy to walk away? This doubt penetrates every aspect of their self-perception. They question their attractiveness, their intelligence, their worth as a friend, partner, or family member. They begin to see themselves through what they imagine are your eyes, and the reflection is not flattering. They realize that while they were busy taking your presence for granted, you were busy evaluating whether their presence was worth your time and energy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." Your disappearance demonstrates this principle perfectly. Stop looking at what they said or did. You stopped investing emotional energy in their words or actions. You chose to focus on your own path, your own peace, your own well-being. This doubt creates a feedback loop of self-questioning that can be both destructive and transformative. They begin to examine their behavior with the kind of scrutiny they never applied before. They start to notice patterns in their relationships, ways they have treated others, moments when they have taken people for granted. Your absence becomes a mirror that reflects their own shortcomings back at them. As the doubt deepens, they experience something that strikes at the very core of their identity: the fear of being replaced. This fear is not about romantic replacement, though that may be part of it. This is about the fear that someone else will occupy the space in your life that they once held. Someone else will receive your attention, your care, your energy. Someone else will be worthy of your presence in ways that they apparently were not. They begin to imagine you rebuilding your life without them. They picture you laughing with other people, sharing experiences with other friends, creating memories with other companions. The thought that you might be happier without them becomes a source of deep anxiety. They realize that their presence in your life was not as essential as they believed, that you are capable of joy, growth, and fulfillment without their involvement. This fear of replacement reveals their own insecurity about their unique value. They begin to question what they brought to your life that could not be found elsewhere. They realize that their contribution to your well-being was perhaps not as significant as they assumed, that their role in your happiness was not as central as they believed. Seneca observed that the willing destiny guides them. The unwilling destiny drags them. Your disappearance represents your willingness to follow your own destiny, to choose your own path, to prioritize your own well-being. Their fear of replacement represents their unwillingness to accept that destiny does not revolve around their desires or expectations. The fear of being replaced evolves into something even more painful: regret, not the simple regret of wishing they had done something differently, but the profound regret of recognizing a lost opportunity. They begin to understand that your presence in their life was not just convenient, it was valuable. That your attention was not just available, it was precious. That your care was not just expected, it was a gift. This regret manifests in countless ways. They regret not responding to your messages with more enthusiasm. They regret not making more time for you when you needed them. They regret not showing more appreciation for your efforts. They regret not recognizing your worth until it was too late. They regret taking your presence for granted and assuming it would always be there. Asterisk, asterisk. The regret becomes a constant companion, coloring their memories with a bittersweet tinge. Every positive memory they have of you is now tinged with the knowledge that they could have created more. Such memories, if they had been more present, more appreciative, more invested. Every moment they spend ignoring you or taking you for granted now feels like a wasted opportunity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. Your disappearance forces them to confront their failure." To follow this wisdom, while you were present, they were focused on other things, their own problems, their own desires, their own priorities. They failed to confine themselves to the present moment of your presence. And now that present moment is gone forever. The regret transforms into something unexpected: emotional curiosity. The first time they find themselves genuinely curious about your inner world. They want to understand what you were thinking during those moments when you seemed distant. They wanted to know what you were feeling when they were too busy to listen. They want to comprehend the process that led to your decision to disappear. This curiosity is different from the confusion they felt initially. The confusion was about external events: why you left, what happened, what they missed. It is about internal experiences: what you felt, what you thought, what you needed. It represents a shift from self-centered concern to genuine interest in your perspective. They begin to realize that during all the time you spent together, they knew remarkably little about your inner life. They focused on how you made them feel, how you served their needs, how you fit into their world. But they never invested serious energy in understanding your world, your needs, your feelings. Your disappearance forces them to confront this emotional ignorance. This curiosity can be both humbling and educational. They begin to understand that relationships require genuine interest in the other person's experience, not just appreciation for what that person provides. They realize that knowing someone means understanding their inner world, not just expecting them to participate in yours. Epictetus taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Your disappearance demonstrates that you understood this principle while they did not. You were listening to their words, their needs, their concerns, but they were speaking into the void of their own self-interest, never truly listening to what you were trying to communicate. As their curiosity deepens, they experience something that can be genuinely transformative: self-reflection. Your absence creates a space for them to examine their own behavior, their own patterns, their own approach to relationships. They begin to see themselves not as they wish to be seen, but as they actually are. This self-reflection is not comfortable. It requires them to confront aspects of their personality they have previously ignored or rationalized away. They must examine their tendency to take people for granted, their assumption that others exist to serve their needs, their failure to reciprocate care and attention. They must face the reality that they have been operating from a place of entitlement. Rather than gratitude, the self-reflection process can be painful but necessary. They begin to understand that your disappearance was not a sudden, inexplicable event. It was the natural consequence of their behavior over time. You did not wake up one day and decide to disappear. You gradually realized that your presence was not being valued, and you made the rational decision to invest your energy elsewhere. This realization can be devastating to their ego, but it can also be liberating. Once they understand the cause and effect relationship between their behavior and your absence, they can begin to make different choices in their other relationships. They can learn to show appreciation, to invest emotional energy, to prioritize the people who matter to them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." Your disappearance represents your decision to change your universe by removing yourself from their orbit. Their self-reflection represents their opportunity to change their own universe by transforming their thoughts and behaviors. Through this process of self-reflection, they begin to develop something they may have never felt for you before: genuine respect. Not the superficial respect of social politeness, but the deep respect that comes from understanding someone's strength, wisdom, and self-worth. They begin to see your disappearance not as abandonment, but as self-preservation, not as cruelty, but as dignity, not as weakness, but as strength. This respect is fundamentally different from the way they viewed you when you were present. When you were available, they may have seen you as accommodating, agreeable, perhaps even predictable. Your willingness to be there for them was taken as evidence of your dedication to them, not as evidence of your generous nature. Your consistency was seen as reliability, not as emotional labor. Now, in your absence, they understand that your presence was a choice, not an obligation. That your care was a gift, not a requirement. That your attention was a privilege, not a right. This understanding transforms their perception of you from someone who existed to serve their needs to someone who chose to enhance their life through your presence. The respect they develop for you is often accompanied by a new understanding of your character. They realize that choosing to disappear rather than engage in conflict demonstrates emotional maturity, that walking away with dignity rather than fighting for recognition shows inner strength, that prioritizing your own well-being over their comfort reflects healthy boundaries. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Your disappearance represents the ultimate delay. The choice to remove yourself from situations that might provoke anger, frustration, or resentment. This choice demonstrates wisdom that they are only now beginning to appreciate. Finally, they experience something that can haunt them for years to come: the profound power of your silence. In a world filled with noise, drama, and constant communication, your silence becomes deafening. It speaks louder than any words you could have spoken, communicates more clearly than any explanation you could have provided. God demonstrates more strength than any confrontation you could have initiated. This silence is not empty. It is full of meaning. It says that you value yourself enough to remove yourself from situations that do not serve you. It says that you understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. It says that you have the strength to choose your own peace over their comfort. It says that you are not dependent on their presence, their approval, or their understanding. For your own well-being, the power of your silence lies not in what it conceals, but in what it reveals. It reveals that you are someone who makes thoughtful decisions about where to invest your energy. It reveals that you understand the value of your own presence. It reveals that you are not controlled by guilt, manipulation, or the fear of disappointing others. It reveals that you are living according to your own values and priorities. Your silence becomes a teacher, instructing them in lessons they never thought they needed to learn. It teaches them that people are not possessions to be owned, but individuals to be appreciated. It teaches them that presence is not a given, but a gift to be treasured. It teaches them that relationships require investment from both parties, not just expectation from one. The haunting power of your silence lies in its permanence. Words can be forgotten, arguments can be resolved, conflicts can be settled, but silence endures. It creates a space in their life that cannot be filled by explanations, apologies, or new relationships. It becomes a constant reminder of what they had and what they lost through their own actions or inactions, Marcus Aurelius wrote. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Your silence is not revenge, it is revolution. It is a quiet revolution against the expectation that you should remain available regardless of how you are treated. It is a personal revolution that prioritizes your own well-being over others' comfort. It is a spiritual revolution that recognizes your worth independent of others' validation. In the end, your disappearance becomes a gift to both of you. For them, it becomes an opportunity to examine their behavior, develop empathy, and learn to value the people in their life. For you, it becomes an act of self-preservation, a demonstration of self-respect, and a step toward a life lived on your own terms. The Stoic philosophers understood that we cannot control how others behave, but we can control how we respond to their behavior. Your disappearance represents the ultimate expression of this wisdom. You chose not to try to change them, educate them, or punish them. You simply chose to remove yourself from their influence and invest your energy elsewhere. This choice is not about anger or revenge. It is about recognition and self-respect. Recognition that your energy is finite and precious. Recognition that your presence is valuable and should be treated as such. Recognition that you have the right to surround yourself with people who appreciate your worth without needing to disappear to prove it. When you disappear with the dignity of a Stoic, you do not destroy bridges, you simply stop crossing them. You do not create enemies, you simply stop expending energy on relationships that do not serve your highest good. You do not seek to hurt others, you simply choose to prioritize your own healing and growth. The 11 things they feel when you disappear: confusion, ego disruption, longing, guilt, doubt, fear of replacement, regret, curiosity, self-reflection, respect. And the power of your silence. These are not punishments you inflict upon them. They're natural consequences of losing someone valuable. They are the psychological and emotional responses to recognizing worth. Only in its absence, your disappearance is not a strategy to make them miss you. It is a strategy to preserve your own dignity and peace of mind. It is a recognition that some people will only understand your value when they no longer have access to it. It is an acknowledgement that your well-being is not dependent on their understanding or approval. Disappearing is not revenge. It is revelation. It is when they finally see who you were, now that you are no longer around. It is when they understand the weight of your presence by experiencing the emptiness of your absence. It is when they learn the lesson that every Stoic philosopher understood, that true strength lies not in fighting every battle, but in choosing which battles are worth your energy, in your silence, in your absence, in your dignified withdrawal. You become a teacher of the most important lesson of all, that people must earn the privilege of your presence, and that privilege, once lost, cannot be demanded back. It must be deserved, appreciated, and treasured. And sometimes, the most powerful gift you can give someone is the opportunity to learn this lesson in the echoing silence of your absence. The path of the Stoic is not the path of the doormat or the people pleaser. It is the path of the person who understands their own worth and chooses to surround themselves only with those who recognize and honor that worth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to show them what life looks like without you in it. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to say nothing at all in the end. Your disappearance becomes a mirror that reflects their true character back to them. And in that reflection, they must choose. Will they learn from what they see, or will they continue the patterns that led to your absence? That choice is theirs to make. Your choice to disappear with dignity has already been made, and in that choice, you have reclaimed your power, your peace, and your freedom to live according to your own values and priorities. This is the way of the Stoic. This is the power of purposeful absence. This is the strength found in silence. This is what it means to disappear, not as an act of weakness, but as an act of ultimate self-respect.